Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very happy and honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Payal Burnham. She is here to celebrate her two Reading with Your Kids certified great reads, Lily's Lost Smile and Silent Sally Speaks. Before we invite Payal into the studio, we want to invite you to follow us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, and at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram. We also have a fantastic page on Pinterest. And you can also listen to the show on YouTube. So many places to connect with us. And of course, one of the best places to connect with us and to stay up to date with everything that's happening on the podcast is by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and signing up for our free newsletter. Joining us right now on the line from Mississauga in Ontario in the beautiful nation of Canada. Our guest today is a speech therapist turned children's author. Please welcome to the show, Payal Burnham. Payal, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for this opportunity and for, allowing me to join your podcast this morning.
I'm really happy to have you on. Now, Payal is the author of two great books, Lily's Lost Smile and Silent Sally Speaks. Before we start celebrating these books and asking her to tell us what they're all about, I need to share some news with Payal. She doesn't know this, but our Certified Great Read panel has reviewed both of the books, and they have both been awarded 5-star reviews by our panel of teachers, kids, and parents, and they are both Certified Great Reads. So congratulations.
Thank you. That's wonderful news. Made my day.
Awesome. So, I'm really intrigued. I've shared on the podcast that I had a very hard time speaking. I had a speech impediment when I was young. It rears its ugly head every once in a while, especially when I am tired. My life was really turned around and enhanced thanks to a speech therapist. Thankfully, I got the help that I needed when I was young and able to yap on a podcast right now, something I probably wouldn't have been able to do had I not received that help. So first off, I want to thank you on behalf of all the kids that you have helped that were in a similar situation to me. So thanks very much for that and serving those kids. Can you tell us what inspired you to become a children's author?
Sure. I mean, I think, becoming a children's author, I guess, comes directly from the work that I do. I've been working with children for the last 6 years or more. And, it's just a very personable experience when you get to meet these kids and when you're kind of helping them with their speech and language challenges. And in doing so, I thought it would be just really nice for, the parents of these children, the families that, or the family members that are within the household to have a resource or a tool to really support some of their speech and language needs at home in a more naturalistic way. While as a professional, you're constantly providing goals and strategies and recommendations to parents to implement at home, and even in school when we're working with, the teaching staff. It's just, so much nicer when they can have a tool or a resource that they can naturally embed in their daily routine. So, a children's book or, story time is generally something that many families kind of do on a regular basis at home. And I just thought that if there was a children's story that kind of addressed some of those speech and language concerns, or, maybe production of sounds, if they're struggling with, pronouncing specific letters, I thought it would be just a really nice way or a really nice resource for parents and educators to support their children's speech and language needs.
Yeah. I know in Lily's Lost Smile that there are lots of words that begin with the letter L, which is a sound that lots of kids have trouble with. And I'm imagining that it would be a lot more fun and a lot more natural way of learning if the way the child practice those L sounds is by helping to read a book with their mom or their dad, instead of just sitting there saying, practice it, put that tongue up behind your teeth and make that noise.
Yes, and exactly. And I think that's, what I was really hoping to hit home is like just having a very natural way of practicing. So as a child is reading, they're practicing these L sounds without even realizing that they're practicing, right? Versus, parents having their child sit at a table and, drill some of those L words that, they're really struggling with. That can become a lot cumbersome, and a child can get frustrated, especially if it's a difficult sound. But if they can kind of, do a more naturalistic activity where, the child may not be aware that they're focusing on their L sound, but they're doing also a fun and engaging activity, that's generally probably a more positive experience in, kind of getting that practice, in there somewhere. So I think, that was one of the main reasons, but I think also, as a young kid, and I think a lot of kids have this dream, is, I wanted to be a teacher. And I remember, just, while I was playing, doing some pretend play, I would pretend I was a teacher, and I would, open up, children's books or storybooks and just read it to a pretend crowd. And, I think, that was, now that, I have a daughter and I'm a mother now, I was just looking at her one day as I was putting her to bed, and I just thought it would be so nice to, be able to do something that would also inspire, my daughter, and also, other children around who might be wanting to, get into story writing or, literacy or anything along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. I am a firm believer, parents listening out there, if you can get a lesson in a sneaky way, kind of undercover, help the kid learn when they're not even realizing they're learning, that's the best kind of teaching, I think. Mm-hmm. It's really an effective way. The kids have a great time, and again, they don't realize that they're learning. It's a lot of fun. I'm really interested in talking to you about Silent Sally Speaks. Can you tell us about this book?
Sure. So Silent Sally Speaks follows a young girl who is a little bit of a reluctant speaker, or, who really demonstrates a lot of anxiety when it comes to having to speak to her peers as well as her teachers in school. At home she is very, very comfortable and, can't stop speaking, but at school it's a completely different story. And Silent Sally Speaks kind of follows her journey in terms of developing that courage and developing that bravery in order to overcome those speaking challenges. And so this book was really written with, the intention of really supporting children who may demonstrate some anxiety. Maybe they're shy, maybe they are, reluctant speakers, or maybe have a diagnosis of selective mutism. It's meant to really provide those children with maybe a character that they can relate to really, help them develop a little bit of that confidence that they need to really push themselves to get to that point of being able to speak to their friends, or being able to speak to that one person in the school that they feel comfortable with. Maybe it's the teacher, maybe it's the principal, maybe it's the office administrator, whoever it might be. It's really a book to really support these children, and as well as educators and parents of these children as well.
Yeah, I had an experience myself. The folks who are listening know that I do educational magic shows, and I've been doing it at schools throughout the country for over 30 years. And it was at least 28, I think, years ago. I was at a school in New Jersey, huge school, and brought a student up on stage and asked the student her name, and she was silent. And I thought, well, this has a large Latin community. I'll just ask her in Spanish, and I did, and there was more silence. And I said, well, you just must be nervous. I understand. There's a lot of people here. Hey, everybody, can you make my friend feel at home? Everybody clapped for her. And then I heard this little voice say, Me llamo Maria. And so then we started speaking to each other, and she did help me with this magic trick. And I didn't think much about it when she went back to her seat. But after the show, her teacher came back in, and her teacher was in tears. And I said, what's up? And she said, you have no idea. Maria is on the autism spectrum. She's been in our school for 2 years. She hasn't said a word to anybody in any language.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Wow. It was, and it's baffled me, because everybody turned to me at that day, and they said, so how did you make her speak? And I'm like, dude, it ain't me. What is, and I don't expect that you could tell me that, 20, why that happened at that moment 28 years ago. But, I've just been fascinated by this idea that there's some kids who, obviously there's some kids who can't speak, but there are some kids, I guess you could call them reluctant speakers.
Yeah, I mean, not all kids have a formal diagnosis of selective mutism. And generally, selective mutism is the term that typically we use for students who might be demonstrating some inconsistencies with their communication across settings, or across, not even just settings, but with people as well. So, they might be comfortable with their parents, but then, when it comes to kids on the playground, we kind of see them become closed off or shut down, and we don't see that communication happening. So we kind of, say reluctant speakers as well, because, some of those kids don't have that formal diagnosis, but, other kids, might just demonstrate a lot of anxiety. So those terms may be used interchangeably. But really in working to support these kids, it's really to just give them time, make them feel comfortable, make them feel heard. We often see their anxiety really, really get very high, or, we make them feel uncomfortable or nervous when we're kind of talking about their communication. So when we say, oh, look, Sally doesn't speak, or when we're trying to, talk for them, that's sometimes, what creates that anxiety. Or if we're kind of pointing out, oh, she hasn't said a word all year. So making those comments, really make these kids much more anxious, and putting that pressure on getting them to communicate in a specific situation or in a specific moment even increases the anxiety even more. So with these kids, we need to provide them with time. We need to provide them with support and that comfort, to help them realize that, we're there to support them, we're there, if, when they're ready to really communicate and really try, whether it's, maybe in a whisper or a low voice, or, whether it's a normal voice. Each child is a little bit different. And so we just need to be mindful of, some of, their feelings and emotions when it comes to speaking in front of different, crowds and settings.
This is really fascinating to me. Do you have an idea of what percentage of kids may be experiencing this?
I actually don't. It's surprisingly, in my profession, I didn't. just being and even working in a school setting, I didn't think I would come across a lot of students with selective mutism. But however, I've definitely had quite a few kids, and it's quite surprising because I didn't think it was as I guess, prevalent of a concern in a school setting or even in children. And so I think that number might be a lot higher than we think.
Interesting. Now, in the case of Maria, and again, this was 28, 29 years ago, the teacher, said to me that Maria had been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. Is this something typically that the kids who experience selective mutism are they? Is this part of the spectrum?
Generally, no. Kids that are on the spectrum, they have communication challenges that are not necessarily always associated with anxiety or nervousness. It's really associated with the diagnosis of being on the spectrum. They just process and develop language differently than typically developing kids. So it's quite interesting that in your experience, even though that child was diagnosed with ASD, that sound came out. And sometimes, we do see that, some kids or some kids on the spectrum, they do have some language, and yes, they may not use it in all contexts, but they will use it in some. And the fact that she was able to say her name in front of the school, that's incredible. That you're able to get her to do that. But generally speaking, selective mutism is much more of an anxiety-related concern or an anxiety-related disorder compared to, autism, which is, something more of, of a spectrum of a concern in itself. So.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the Maria story that I didn't elaborate on is it was wonderful. I thought that, she speaks Spanish, so I would try to address her in Spanish and address the audience in English. And right. I'm not fluent, and so I would reverse that sometimes and speak to her in English and speak to the audience in Spanish. She would answer me in whatever language I spoke to her. So not only did she say her name, but she was speaking to me in English and Spanish, which really blew the minds of the teachers.
Oh, absolutely. And it's wonderful that, especially if the teacher said that was her first opportunity to speak, or not even opportunity, I guess her first, the first time she spoke in front of the school. I think that's a wonderful scenario of, possibly could have been selective mutism, but definitely if she had any language or just the development of her language would be associated more towards her diagnosis. And then maybe she's developed some anxiety about speaking, as she's acquired that language.
Interesting. This is really fascinating. I'm guessing that, our knowledge and understanding of speech difficulties has really grown exponentially, certainly since I was a kid almost 100 years ago, and probably has grown a lot since I had that interaction with Maria.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. It's language is constantly evolving, and I find I'm learning something new every year, even though I've been in the profession for quite some time now. So it's definitely a field that continues to grow and continues to open our eyes into, different learning methods and learning ways. Yeah.
As you were speaking about that, anxiety to speak to others, to folks that you might not know very well, the thing that I immediately thought of is when I'm especially it happened more when I first got married. My beautiful wife is originally from Puerto Rico, and when I would meet her family and try to speak Spanish, I would feel tremendous anxiety and oftentimes decided to just be quiet and stand in a corner.
Yes, that's a great example, actually, right? And I'm sure when you're meeting people for the first time, and especially if like yourself, if you had speech therapy in the past, you may have also experienced some disfluencies as you spoke to them too, right? Maybe not always having the words in your head, or maybe like stumbling on a few words as you're kind of saying them. Those are very normal, and even when we as speakers who may have fluent speech, we always present with at least some disfluencies. And so I always tell my kids, you might be nervous, you might be shy, and things may not come out the way you want it to, but that's normal. We're humans, and our feelings sometimes do take over when we're speaking, and some of those feelings, those disfluencies, they do come across, and even in normal speech. So I just help them feel comfortable in that way.
Disfluency. I love that word. It definitely describes, when I'm trying to speak Spanish, I experience all sorts of disfluencies. I tend to mix up syllables, and sometimes the words, the way they come out, they ended up being bad words, and I got myself into some trouble sometimes.
Oh, that's something definitely to be careful of when we're learning new language. We're speaking a different language for sure.
You mentioned that you're learning something new, and that our understanding of speech and language and the difficulties some kids face, it's growing. What's some new learning that you just became aware of that really surprised you in a wonderful way?
Well, I think, one of the, I guess maybe something recently that I just learned last week was, when we're thinking about our kids on the spectrum, and I know we were just speaking about some children with autism, is that, there's definitely certain behaviors that they present with, or different, or even I guess vocalizations that they may present with, because some of our kids on the spectrum don't always have language, and they may not be verbal. So sometimes what happens is when we're seeing these children, and even as parents, when we're kind of, observing our kids, we always think of, things that we want to change. So we always think about behaviors, or, things that we're like, oh, this is not typical. I need to change that. I need to get rid of that hand bobbing behavior. I need to get rid of that, that vocalization, or that screaming behavior, or, that repetition that, he always does at the beginning of his sentences. But, we fail to realize sometimes that, maybe some of those, behaviors, or some of those, communication pieces that they're doing might be a coping mechanism for these children, right? Whether it's, their I guess anxiety, or nervousness, or whatever that feeling might be, to, help them cope with their environment. I think, we just kind of fail to realize that, some of those things that we want to change may actually be benefiting the kids in a way that we don't really understand. And it's only when we maybe start doing those behaviors, we realize, okay, yes, this is helping, us as individuals to, go on with our day. And so, I think we need to be mindful of that, when we're working with, children with autism, but any children, right? So, if we, even in typically developing children, there might be habits that they do, and, sometimes we don't really understand why they're doing those things, or, engaging in those habits. But if we take the time to really, understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, I think it can really help us to understand our children a little bit more and help them. So I think that's something to be really, really mindful of. Yeah.
So important for parents to remember to get to know their kids, to discover who their kid is, instead of comparing your kid with the other kids around. Allow your kid to be your kid and support your kid's development in the way that they need it.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well. Let your kids explore. Don't shelter them in any way. Give them those opportunities to be themselves and be who they are, and really get to know them, because kids grow up as well, and they kind of grow through those phases and grow, and things change. But in those moments when some of those when that time is critical, it's really important to be there for your kids and support them in any way you can.
Yeah. Yeah. So allow them to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to be disfluent, maybe get some syllables wrong in a word that was supposed to say one thing comes out as a bad word. Don't flip out. Just support them and love them.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, Payal, tell everybody where they can go to learn more about you and to learn more about your wonderful certified great read books.
Sure. So please feel free to follow me on my website, www.teachtospeechbooks.com. Check out the Reading with Your Kids website as well. I'm hoping there will be links there soon to some of my books and some of my publications. But you can also follow me on my social media sites on Instagram and Facebook at Teach to Speech Books or on Twitter at Teach to Speech. And just to let you all know that the books are now available on Amazon US, Amazon Canada, and Barnes & Noble's online.
We've had a great time speaking with our guest, Payal Burnham. Her books, Lily's Lost Smile and Silent Sally Speaks, are our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great reads. And we've learned so much today, Payal. Thank you so very much for being here.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's a very special and different episode of the podcast. Our guest is Karen Parsons. You may remember Karen as one of the stars of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. She's also a celebrated children's author and the founder of the Sweet Blackberries Foundation. Our intern, Justina Thompson from Emerson College, interviewed Karen for our special Juneteenth episode. And what was originally scheduled to be a very short interview for a segment on that episode turned into an absolutely wonderful conversation. And we're going to share that whole interview with you on our next episode. At the beginning of today's episode, you heard that Payal Burnham's two books, Lily's Lost Smile and Silent Sally Speaks, were both named Certified Great Reads by our panel. If you are an author of a fantastic children's book and are frustrated at how difficult it is to get your book noticed, you want to check out our Certified Great Reads program. If our panel of parents, teachers, and kids believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a number of really wonderful and powerful promotional tools that can help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. Do you realize there are thousands of books published every single month? Every author needs a hand. We would love to lend you one. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to Certified Great Reads. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Payal Burnham. Please be sure to check out her two Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Reads, Lily's Lost Smile and Silent Sally Speaks. Also want to thank my team, Alana Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.